chair is going to turn to the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the panelists for appearing before us today. We have certainly challenging issues in front of us regarding what's real and what's not. We all want to protect the American people from unnecessary harm, but we also want to move forward with sound science as we do so. So this is a bipartisan effort, and I'm quite sure that the scientists before us and the experts that have testified before us and met with us in our offices agree that we have a common goal here. The American farmer feeds the world. And the studies that I've read, including EPA reports and various other research documents, use verbiage like most likely and probable and potentially increased risk regarding the primary chemical within Roundup. It's a herbicide used to increase crop yield. So now I clearly recall a few years ago the rumor that plastic bottles cause cancer was widespread. Now, we all drink from plastic bottles. I've never seen a colleague eat the bottle. So the usage of Roundup in reality on farms across America and in households is used very carefully because it's very expensive. They use computerized disbursement on large farm machinery to carefully disperse this stuff. The protective clothing is worn. So I would say that a hungry child that the American farmer feeds across the world by the compassion and generosity of our nation, Mr. Chairman, a hungry child is concerned about overcoming that hunger at that moment with food provided by the American farmer, as opposed to most likely, probable, or potentially increased risk of cancer sometime down the line. So I have a question. You said something, Dr. Lowit, very interesting earlier. You stated that EPA conducted its assessment of glyphosate with conservative risk assumption. Can you please clarify for us what that means? What is a conservative risk assumption?
So as a measure to be resource efficient in our risk assessment process, we use a tiering process when we evaluate exposure. Our Tier 1 assessments use high-end estimates that are health protective and often even compound those assumptions together. And in the case of glyphosate, we've done a health protective Tier 1 level, in most cases, assessment that uses health protective conservative assumptions and came to the conclusion, despite those conservative assumptions, that there's no risk to humans, including infants and children.
Would you recommend changes to the IARC to make this program, to ensure transparency and reliable reporting to the public that you're attempting to inform? Is there some improvement or streamlining of the scientific process where data can be shared amongst perhaps conflicting conclusions by various scientists, including scientists from organizations from other nations? Can there be more transparency and inclusion of scientific data so that we can come to a conclusion? Because you know, the loss of Roundup would definitely hurt the production of crop yield across the world, and there'd be an immediate impact felt worldwide. So do you have suggestions on how to improve the process so we can arrive at the truth ultimately?
So EPA is not bound by our IARC conclusions. As noted in my testimony, we've come to the conclusion that glyphosate's not likely a carcinogenic to humans, and that's similar to many other nations in the world, including our Canadian colleagues and the European Food Safety
European
Group.
colleagues. I concur. Dr. Sass, could you add to that?
Well, the European assessment is being investigated because it's been shown that they took the first draft from Monsanto and they barely redlined it. So I don't think that should be held up as the high bar. And as far as as transparency and the use of glyphosate, I just think a proper risk assessment should be done. And what's happening here is that the EPA is doing the hazard assessment and calling it not likely without doing the slope factor and the risk assessment. I'm guessing because it favors Monsanto's interest for selling it abroad.
Do you recommend that that Roundup be pulled from the market?
No, that has not been our recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.